Chad, one of our PAC members who has hired Dylan, also wants to hire another MATC grad from the IMT program. So that's exciting to see our PAC members opening up spots for our graduates to serve and work with them. This semester, we're sitting at, for first semester students, 19 students. We started with 22. 2 did not show, and we've lost 1 in the first month, 5 weeks, but we still hold 19 students, and I'm looking to see probably 15 of those come second semester. So I'm excited about that. We're looking at possibly 7 to 8 graduates in May. If everybody walks that I'm planning on walking, we will see 18 grads in May. We, as you know, we transitioned from having Bill Gilligan on board, who served the MATC well and built a darn good program that I'm proud to be a part of. And as stepping into the spot that he occupied as leading the program, I vacillate between days of thinking we've got this. It's going to be an awesome program, and the next day I just don't want to crash the plane. So there's a lot that's involved in that. Bill carried a lot of things that he did to keep the program good, and Chris and I will work our backsides off to make sure we maintain at least that, if not better, as we move forward. But I could bore you probably with a lot of details about things that we're trying to do, but I'd like to leave some time for questions if you got any questions of Chris and I.
How long is your program for a student to graduate? How long?
4 semesters mostly. Some students do it slower. They want, for financial reasons, life reasons, they take courses at a slower rate. So it could go 5 semesters. I know one student has been working at it for at least 6 semesters and probably still has a couple more just at the rate he's taking courses. And the way our courses cycle, they have to wait. So if they take them on 1 or 2 courses at a time, they may have to wait a whole year before the next course they need comes along.
So what do you see as your and Chris's biggest hurdle coming up next semester?
Biggest hurdle is making sure we're going to be training our students to meet the demands of the industry. There's a couple of things that are really emerging. Is a big emphasis on cybersecurity and being able to answer that call out of the industry. There's a lot of, matter of fact, I just saw this week, I think it's from Indeed.com, the biggest skill that is being called for out of resumes on Indeed.com is cybersecurity professionals. So I think if we're going to answer that call, we're going to need to probably shift some of the course offerings, and or this is just a seed of a dream I have, offering a 2-pronged program where we continue to train network administrators, but we offer a prong that focuses on cybersecurity administration.
Do you assist with the job placement? Or they pretty much, they have a job as soon as they walk out the door?
Ever since I've come here, I've considered it my responsibility as an instructor to get students employed. It's just personal. Sarah and them didn't place that on me. That's just a personal thing that I place on myself. And I work with students as far as resume building, interviewing skills. That's just one-on-one. For any student that wants that help, I help them. And I keep a running communication with job openings anywhere that I can find them and push those to the student and encourage them to apply. So I start from the first semester working on their hireability. It takes 4 semesters. Well, it takes about 2.5 semesters to get them to listen to what I'm saying. And about the 3rd semester, they start perking up and going, oh my goodness, I better listen to this guy and work on the things that I need to work on in order to be hireable whenever it comes. And if I can get them to, this is something I'm working on, it's slow, but if I can get them to, they'll start applying in the beginning of their 4th semester at the latest. Because you just got to start working the job market and networking the job market that way to get into those good jobs. And I consider Dylan a success because he's worked himself into the job market 1 semester before he graduates. which is what I would like to see happen.
Good. Why don't you briefly tell them a little bit about your advisory committee and then also about the Capstone Project?
Okay, we have a pack of I think it's 8 or 9 members. I don't have solid relationships with all of them. It's just been because of like we don't see them a lot until we have a pack meeting. We just had a pack meeting the Friday before Thanksgiving break. And we are shifting to what a couple of the programs are already in what we call a built model instead of a pack model. Because I would like our pack members, our professional members, to become more involved with coaching the program, guest lecturing in the program, interacting with the students more, so that the students have those relationships. So we're going to be shifting to that next spring.
Okay.
And moving into that model. And I'm excited about that because I think it's going to offer us more investment from our professionals in the community into what we're doing, so that it doesn't sound like Chris and I are the only ones saying what we're saying. Our professional community is going to be saying the same thing we're saying. And I think that's just one of the benefits we're going to get from moving to a built model. Or you guys are familiar with that. Some of our other programs are doing it. Capstone, our Capstone Projects pulls in the last semester, it pulls the senior students, the last semester students, into an environment where they're actively managing the network that we have set up inside the INT program. There's a full network, there's servers, all of the network gear, a lot of other networking type Internet of Things hardware. And the students get involved in maintaining that and working on that network. And they also get to be invested in maybe even upgrading that network like we did last semester. We moved a lot of our networking gear into layer technology, layer hardware, and the Capstone class of last spring built all of that, reinstalled it, set it up, and made it run. With this, they can put on their resume, and this is the way I coach them, they can put on their resume as a student in our program, they've actually worked on a small business size network. It's an actual experience. So many employers now are looking for that thing, 5 years experience, experience, and doesn't matter what training they've got, they want them to have years of experience. Well, with our program, they have actual hands-on experience with configuring the networking gear, maintaining the networking gear, upgrading the networking gear, and working on that. And it's pretty high pressure because they step into it in a semester, and then in 17 weeks, it's pretty intensive. It's probably the most intensive course they take in their last semester. And then they present what they did right before they graduate, and they're, for lack of better words, they're grilled by our PAC member panel on their experience and how they present it and what they did. So they have to make a verbal and visual presentation of all they worked on for that semester in the capstone. Something that we're about to start doing this next spring is we're going to take a course that we've offered every second semester, and we're going to bump it up to what we call Capstone 1 for our second semester students. And those students will work alongside the fourth semester students in what we're going to call Capstone 2. So they start getting that capstone exposure even in their second semester. I think this is going to help with retention. It's going to make them a little more hungry for what it is we're offering. They get a little more hands-on, and they start networking with more experienced students, meaning human networking. They start building relationships, learning to communicate with people that are a little bit further down the trail than they are. And I think that's going to help with retention, and it's going to build our experience with that small business size network.
What is the capacity of the number of students that you can handle?
The classroom is 22. Where we pull the first semester students in. Both classrooms are pretty full at 22 students. The fall, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but the fall of COVID, we seated 2 sections. So we took in 31 students and we offered 2 sections of each first semester course. And so we had some adjunct help with Josh and some other folks, and we fought 2 sections of that course to cover that 31. But then we got hammered that spring with the pandemic stuff. And those guys are about to graduate in May, and we've got about 8 or 9 of those left.
Ronnie, let me jump in here real quick. A couple years back, in working with Bill Gilligan, the prior instructor, we have high attrition within this program. We did have 2 entry points. We had a fall and a spring entry point. And one of the things that we talked about and what we did was we changed it to 1 entry point. And so the idea is to take double sections when they first come in, the students first come in, because a lot of the times the students don't understand what networking is. There's so much technology jobs out there that they don't understand what our focus is. And so we lose a lot of students during that first semester. And so we created taking double sections at first. So then that way the goal was by the second semester, or at least going into the second year, we have a full class of 22 students, because what was happening was we were having graduates anywhere between single digits, basically 5 or 6 students at a time. And so we were trying to take care of that particular issue because one, we needed higher graduates out there, but also because of faculty being able to make load based on their associated agreement.
So there you have it. That's where we are. I have began to call, well, I have pretty much since I've been here, but every entry point, I call them a cohort. And they will forever be that until they graduate as part of that group. As long as they stay a part of that group, they'll be a part of that cohort. So the first semesters that I'm working with now, they're the cohort of fall 2021. And just call them that, and it helps in some team building. One thing that while I have 25 years of IT experience that I brought to the table, I'm a teacher by trade. I love teaching. And another thing that I work very hard on is the human element of education, emotional intelligence, human relationship skills, speaking skills, communication skills. I work very hard on that because I think that helps these students develop to be good professionals, because they need that in the professional world. And I see it working this semester really strongly by motivating the students to invest themselves in learning what it is they need to learn, instead of just sitting in a seat like a bird waiting for somebody to feed them. They're stepping into the learning process this semester, and it's exciting to see that happen and to see that investment, because I do believe in it as a teacher, that there's more than just telling them how circuits work together and how to configure hardware. We got to teach them how to be humans too, and how to be good human workers. And this is something I invest in, so I felt it important to say that. And one last thing, we developed a new logo last year, and I've endeavored, as I stepped into leading this program, I wanted all the students to wear a uniform type shirt. We were like one of the last programs that didn't have anything like that. They wore whatever they wanted to. And so we started this fall with all the students getting 2 shirts. The first semester students also were able, through their financial aid, to buy a toolkit that we pieced together so that they would have the actual network installation tools they needed to do what we did in class. And I don't know what it is, but I think those 2 efforts have also contributed to building some teamwork. They can identify with one another in the classes, and all of our students are now wearing logo gear, so they can be identified around campus as INT students. I mean, this is a mistake. If you want me to talk, I can talk for hours.
Is there any other questions for Rodney or Chris?
Just one. So you build your own network. Are you working the cybersecurity through that network building to where they have you attack it and make them?
Yes, Tim. Security is an element of every course we teach. I teach A+ and Intro to Networks from Cisco in the first semester. And then there's 2 or 3 other courses. There's a chapter at least in every one of those courses around cybersecurity.
Okay.
So they start hearing about it halfway through the first semester.
Okay.
And every course we teach is focused on that. And we have a couple of courses that are actually specific cybersecurity courses.
Yeah.
So we're already in there.
Great.
I just think we're probably going to have to step up a little bit more.
One of the problems with their advisory group is the advisory group keeps wanting them to add more into the program. There's a point where you have to start taking away. And that's been a balancing act for years is if you want us to do this, something has to give.
Sure.
It's an ongoing conversation, but I think if we execute a built model for our advisory group, I think we're going to be better at it. We'll execute quicker. I think that's my theory.
That capstone panel is like the Inquisition.
Oh,
It's brutal.
it can get brutal, but I welcome it because it makes them own the work that they've just done for force.
And they have to work on their presentation skills.
Oh, yeah, they do. Communication. We gotta, I mean, if we can eliminate verbal pauses, we'll be halfway there.
That's all part of public speaking though.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, yeah.
And I start right away the freshman semester. Within the first 2 or 3 weeks, students are standing in front of class presenting stuff that they've worked on as groups. I just go ahead and get those bugs out as fast as I can.
All right. Well, thank you, Rodney. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
We're going to excuse ourselves if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you much.
Y'all have a good evening.
You too.
Nice to see you.
Not now, chapter. What's next? Oh, yeah. They're not plugged into anything, it's safe.
Well, we're gonna,
Sorry, go ahead.
okay, I was just gonna introduce them if you want to introduce them.
Sure. So we have Mike and Brooke from Charleston Wilson Insurance. They work with us on a ton of different insurance, but today they're going to go over a little bit on our cybersecurity insurance coverage that we just recently renewed. Kind of hit some high points on that and what that does for us, and then kind of go over any questions. Yeah.
So my understanding is about 20 minutes is allowed. That's what, so I could spend 20 hours talking
Do
about.
we need to start a timer?
6:23.
So I will not do that to you, but because we're trying to condense a lot into 20 minutes here on a policy that's extremely complicated, some of this is going to be quick. Now, I would like to leave some time at the end. I think the benefit from your perspective is going to be having an opportunity to ask some questions. But my thought was just to give you an overview of the cyber program that we have put in place for MATC. And it is two-part in that we have 2 different carriers that are providing coverage for us. One is Chubb Insurance, and they are writing what is called the cyber liability policy. And then we also have Cincinnati Insurance involved, and they are writing a policy that is what we refer to as a crime policy. But the coverages that are within that crime are oftentimes thought of as cyber. There are 300 different carriers providing, maybe more, there's probably more than that. There are hundreds of carriers that provide cyber policies. No 2 are the same. No 2 companies are equal in their ability to provide broad coverage. We are an independent agency, so I just want to let you know, as an independent, which as opposed to a direct writer, we're not obligated to place business with any company. We have access to those hundreds of markets that are out there. We receive the applications, meet with Josh and Melissa, whoever it may be, that provides us the information. We take that into the insurance world, receive our quotes, and then we process them and narrow them down. Cyber has become difficult. Schools, colleges, universities, extremely difficult. In fact, if not the hardest hit industry over the last 5 years, it's certainly one of them. The pandemic had a lot to do with that, but companies are struggling in 2 ways. One, they're having a tough time keeping up with the constantly changing threats that exist, and they're also being clobbered on a claim standpoint. So we have a lot of companies that are backing off of coverage, backing off of certain markets that they want to write for. And then we've also seen stricter underwriting, which MATC was affected by having to produce a multi-factor authentication in order to even receive the quotes. The two best companies, in my opinion, that are out there that write a true cyber policy would be Chubb and Travelers. We have you with Chubb. Travelers was involved, but at the end of the day, we still have to take the comprehensiveness of the coverage, the self-retention, the pricing. It's based on their appetite for a school. But I can assure you that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is create the best value for MATC. And it came down to those two, and Chubb was where we landed with the cyber. And then we picked up Cincinnati to write the crime, which was really rounded out the account for us. So to jump straight in, I apologize. Probably would have been helpful to have a handout for you, but given our time, I'm going to just go through this. And then we're going to have a copy of this review. And then also we have coverage definitions. There's wording that's going to be used, that's used in the policy. If you want to refer to those definitions or have questions, you'll have copies of that. And again, apology for not having them here with us. The Chubb policy provides a limit of liability of $1 million and has a self-retention limit of $20,000. So that is essentially a deductible. The effective dates of this policy run from November 2nd of 2021 to November 2nd of 2022. The policy is structured in a way that is essentially two parts. Every cyber policy, or every good cyber policy, is going to have a first party agreement and a third party agreement. The first party coverages are to protect you from essentially the out-of-pocket costs that you will incur in the event of a breach or an attack. So there are four parts within the first party. The first is what is referred to as a cyber incident response. Those would be your notification expenses. It could be legal fees, forensics, crisis management, public relations. There are all kinds of things that when a breach or an attack occurs or is suspected, that must be done, not only internally as part of your operation, but also in the eyes of the state. And there's also federal regulations that will kick in. So a lot of that generates expenses. We have to figure out what was affected, how many files, how many records, how did they get in, who was impacted. And then once we know that, there's a notification process. All of it is creating additional expenses for the college. That is covered under the first part within the first party agreement. The second would be what is business interruption and extra expense coverage. And under a property policy, you might be familiar with this. If you owned a restaurant and you had a kitchen fire, that kitchen fire takes out either all the building or a portion of it. Regardless, there is going to be a period of time in which that restaurant is shut down while repairs are being made or the building is being rebuilt. That period of time during that restoration, there are two things that happen to the insured. One, they're losing income, and two, they may have additional expenses that are created because they need to, so that they don't lose customers or students in this case. They need to provide a place where they continue to provide meals. So they're renting another space while their ongoing expenses continue. We don't think of cyber in that same way. It's not as easy to view it that way, but in a cyber claim, we have the same problem. We can have a loss of income, and we can also have additional expenses that are created while we're trying to repair and restore electronic systems. So we provide that through the cyber policy. And that is, when I talk about companies being some better than others, there's a point right there that makes the better companies better companies. Not all of them will have that additional coverage for business interruption. We do. Again, it's within that $1 million limit. The other, the third would be the digital data recovery. So this would be the cost to restore or replace lost or damaged data or software. As a sub point to that coverage, there's also coverage is provided in the event that costs were incurred on a phone bill due to charges for fraudulent calling. I have not seen that one, but it is noted often. So I just haven't had experience with that. But that digital data recovery is an optional coverage. And we feel that that's probably one of the most important things in all of what we've put together, we view as absolutely needed and common in claim situations and needing to be responded to. The last is what I think most of you are very familiar with, some of you firsthand. And that would be what is called network extortion, which is ransomware. So it's payments to prevent digital destruction or impairment of your system. So those are all considered the first party, they're out-of-pocket costs. The second part of the agreement would be the third-party liability. And within the third party, we have two components. One is very broad, all-encompassing. On the policy, it reads as cyber, privacy, and network security liability. So these are suits that are brought from a third party against the college for financial harm that they have incurred due to the breach or the attack on your system. So it can come in many different ways, many different forms. And what we're looking for there in the policies and their carriers is extremely broad language that is very full of exclusions. And so that's why we like the Chubb policy, and that's what we put you with. There's another third party's lawsuit that can stem from all of this. And that is on the policy, it's titled Electronic, Social, and Printed Media Liability. And that is a coverage that is really addressing, I mean, I'm sure, because I just visited with Josh about this, was on the website looking at something. So I know that the college uses a website, and you use social media, and you use printed media to advertise the school and attract students and build your reputation within the region. So whenever we are out advertising like that, either printed, social media, or on a website, there is a risk of copyright infringement, trademark infringement, and also defamation. So within the Chubb piece, that is those are the first party and the third party threats and risks and exposures that are being addressed. Now on the Cincinnati piece, which is under the crime, I'll have Brooke kind of go through that with you.
So for the crime, and this one is new this year, we put it under the educator's legal liability policy, which is underwritten with Cincinnati, and that renews at the same time as the commercial package and the work comp, et cetera. So that will expire on July 1st of 2022. And there are three coverages that the college did not have before, even our agency didn't have before this year, that when we renewed our policy, we now started looking on behalf of all of our insureds to make sure that they were covered in the same way. And they are computer fraud, funds transfer fraud, and the one that actually triggered everything was social engineering fraud. And what prompted us to go to Cincinnati instead of Chubb really was the social engineering fraud and the broad language and the lack of exclusions that, in my humble opinion, anyone would be subject to. So we definitely have you with the broadest program. Computer fraud is loss or damage to money resulting directly from the use of any computer to fraudulently cause a transfer of that property from the premises or banking premises. So if an employee of a vendor gained access to Josh's computer, so it must be computer to computer, and changed a routing number unbeknownst to Josh, then that would fall under computer fraud. And that would be a paid claim up to $100,000 with a $1,000 deductible. Then we have funds transfer fraud, and this one is a little bit different. This one is the loss of funds resulting from a fraudulent instruction directing a financial institution to transfer, pay, or deliver funds from your account. So somebody who is masking themselves as a bank employee contacts the CFO and says, in order to upgrade your, your accounts, you need to click on this link. And so that person believes the phone call is from the bank. They gave all the necessary information. They click on the link, and there was a loss of funds there. So again, $100,000 limit with $1,000 retention. Now, the social engineering fraud, which is when we've actually seen claims in our community for both internal and external here. And really the only difference is where the transfer instruction comes from. So an example of internal would be if Josh's email was cloned and someone else who has the ability to pay an invoice received an instruction from Josh to send $15,000 for this bill, and they did it in good faith. There was no negligence on their part. Josh's email was cloned. That would be paid up to $100,000. And there is a $10,000 retention on that one, strictly because the claims are so vast at this point. Now, the other one is external. So let's say my email was cloned and Josh received an email from me instructing him to pay the cyber liability policy for $5,000. And he clicks on the link because he believes it's from me. It has my signature. We communicate via email constantly, and that money is gone. That is where the external piece would come from. Again, $100,000 limit, $10,000 retention. So when we looked at the cyber liability piece, we really felt that while you were very well protected from the first party and third party with Chubb, this was the better place, strictly because on the social engineering fraud, they don't require any verification, and Chubb did. They needed, if you were to have a claim, they were going to ask for lots of documentation that Mike and I just didn't think was reasonable. It wouldn't be reasonable in our agency. So we couldn't expect anyone else to adhere to those. And so that is where the crime piece is, and that'll renew on 7/1 of 22 with the same limits.
And we've had examples of most of those hit us, correct?
Yeah, especially in the business office.
Yeah.
I saw a stat just going through, reading through cyber liability, and it stood out to me because of MATC, but it was Microsoft Security Intelligence reported that last year, 62% of their nearly 5.8 million malware cases came from the education sector. So it just stood out to me as why would the education sector, colleges, schools, universities, why are they being targeted? Obviously, pandemic, online learning, there were devices being handed to students, people doing things online, Zoom meetings.
Understaffed.
Understaffed, we weren't paying attention because we were so distracted trying to figure out where, what the schedules were.
And as our previous teachers mentioned, they're being asked to teach students more about cybersecurity, which actually is called ethical hacking. But if somebody decides not to be ethical, I mean, we're teaching them tools of the trade the wrong way as well.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think another point to be made on this is, and it's preaching to the choir, you have bought a cyber policy, you understand the need for it, but it just interesting to me was that the information of students is highly sought after because they're selling it on the dark web. And a lot of times it will not be realized for years because of the age of the young age. They may not be buying a home for 5, 6, 7 years. So they may not be in a loan application process where it's discovered. So they're able to sell that information repeatedly and use it, identity theft of young people, even into the grade schools, which is ideal for them. Because it could be 15, 20 years before it's ever revealed that there was an identity theft taken on a child until they start trying to take out bank accounts and borrow money. So neither here nor there, but I thought it was interesting and an explanation as to why the risk is so high right now. So and we did shoot through that pretty quick. So I wanted to leave time for questions and things that you may want to know not only about your policy or just cyber in general.
Has the college ever had to file a claim on the cyber security policy? No.
I don't think so.
We've had some,
Knocking
I
on
would
wood.
cut close calls. We've had some, it seems like our employee base, the ones that we've seen that have got a lot of the neighboring colleges in trouble, they've caught it. So a lot of that is user education, which we try to hit, every in-service or do some updates on what to look for in an email, because we can only block so much. If, a legitimate Gmail account or something out there actually gets hacked, we can't block that because our system sees it as legitimate. So then it comes down to the user. A business office is a good example. They catch them all the time, where a lot of the requesting a payment or wanting to change your routing number as a vendor, a lot of that kind of stuff. So far so good, but
About twice a year, we put employees through training from the INT students,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
includes even passwords, just common things to do. The other thing is when something hits, like if I get a funny one or business office, we share it with Josh. He sends it out to everybody. Here's an example to keep them on your toes. But it's his crew behind the scenes that are really doing the miracle work.
With the multiple authentications and everything, I know the staff and faculty go through the cybersecurity training. Do the students have a component of that as well? All the students that are.
There's information available for them that we just have, in their all student online courses, but as far as a hands-on, not at this time. They cover so much stuff during orientation. I can't imagine fitting anything else, but.
Well, I don't know, since we're dealing with the insurance side of it, what does Chubb say about that, or Cleveland, or any of those others?
So there's and Josh can attest to this, a very extensive cyber liability application that he must complete every single year. I mean, I think I sent it to him 2 months prior, just to give him time to do so. So they review all of the controls that you have in place. I don't even, in all honesty, layman's terms, I don't even understand half of what I'm asking him. That's how detailed they get, that only an IT person can answer these questions.
Well, it's hard to believe that anybody ever gets a policy written.
Absolutely. So they do take a look at each individual risk, and Cincinnati did as well.
Okay.
Because Josh, when you and I met, we discussed how the bills are paid by MATC.
Well, and the multi-factor, I don't know if you remember, but that's what finally gave us that push, because I've been chirping about it for years, but it's one of those things that annoys everyone. So finally, well, we can't write the policy unless we do it. Okay, good. Finally, something we can stand on. So it's rolling now. There were some complaints, but now it's over. Doing okay. Mainly Sarah.
We have a particular member in Josh's crew that really goes above and beyond monitoring the firewalls, everything for us. Yeah, you look sick, go away. But we treat it as it's going to happen sometime. That's how we treat it. What do we do to prepare for it? My previous institution got hammered a few years ago. They presented on it. That's where Sarah and I got a lot of information we brought back to Josh. Because just as critical, and I shared with Josh, there was information today on 2 community colleges got hit with ransomware attacks, and both colleges had to shut down, literally shut down. So a good chunk of what he works on with these folks is when it happens, then what do we do? Because that's more important than anything, is that crisis management.
So, and to that point, I should have, but one of the advantages also of this Chubb insurance is that they will provide, in fact, it's conditional upon the coverage limit being $1 million. They provide what is called a cyber incident response team. So I'll just show you.
We turn it over to them.
When you call, you are assigned to a team. These are the national, it goes from law firms, just to go through just quickly, law firms, legal regulatory communications, public relations, individual notification services, computer forensics, loss mitigation, this is a team assembled by Chubb of IT experts. Now, Chubb has done this for two reasons. One, it is a service to their policyholders because the overwhelming amount of work that must be done to resolve the situation could be overwhelming. That in itself is debilitating. So you can get back to doing what you need to be doing and assign it over to a team who's handling the forensics and the legal component, and then advising, we need to get this done, you'll need to sign, you'll need to send these letters. But there's another reason involved, and it is they believe that the team that they've assembled with their professionalism, their knowledge, that they're able to mitigate these claims much more effectively and efficiently than the policyholder could on their own. Therefore, not only reducing the claim amount for the benefit of the college, but also for them, keeps their loss ratios in check. So there is a self-interest from the carrier on that, but it really turns out to be a great benefit for the policyholder as well. And that not everyone, in fact, the only one I know that's doing that is Chubb, and I think they're wise to do it.
I have a couple of questions on the business interruption that you talked about. How do you determine what the revenue level is that needs to be restored? How do you calculate what that is?
Yeah, great question. So it would be done based upon the prior year, if that is acceptable to the college. It may not be because of the prior year we just had. So I've seen the same is true in property losses. If we had a large retail operation, the roof collapsed, they were out for 10 months. We took the sales that they had done the prior year and used that as the basis to gauge how much income had been lost. Now, in that claim though, the business owner made the point that the prior year they sold K-State gear. The football team was lousy, and so they didn't sell as much. So we used a 3-year average. Well, they'd been lousy for 2 of those 3 years. So we took a 5-year average. I mean, they'll work with you to try to get an accurate number that depicts the average income during that same period of time.
Okay. The other question I had is on the crime policy. You talked about in a couple of different instances that there's $100,000 limit. Kind of knowing what the funds are that the college works with on a day-to-day basis, is that determined to be adequate? Is that, I mean, when you're dealing in multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars, is $100,000 limit adequate?
We kind of talked about that with one of the accountants here. Anything ever, I mean, even close to that, as a transfer sets off so many approvals and red flags that I can't see it would ever get through. I mean,
but it's one of those, if we grow with revenue and holdings, then that might have to go up. But yeah, right now it seems adequate for our.
Well, I wondered if that was a limit that was imposed by the insurance company or if that was a limit that was selected by the college.
It was a limit that was imposed by the insurance company.
Yeah.
But it was based on our activity, correct?
It's actually the highest limit
Okay.
available for purchase as of right now for those 3 coverages.
Which is a clear sign of how
bad this is.
prevalent these claims are. The advice we give is to have internal policies that reduce the risk.
which we do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If there's anything that hits 25,000 or higher, it has to come to you guys. So it wouldn't matter if I was requesting, I can't do that.
And so even if you received a fraudulent email or somebody did, it's just good to know, and Josh confirmed that anything over a certain amount, which is well under the 100,000, does need to go to multiple people for approval.
Well, and then some question, it had in the past was the $20,000 deductible is that high, but in the scheme of things, when the ransomware, it's usually closer to $1 million, but it's really.
I mean, Carmel had received emails from somebody trying to beat me a year or 2 ago. saying, I need you to transfer, I think it was $25,000 or $50,000, right away, once you know, that's not coming from me. But again, we keep on top of it as best we can with almost constant training and information out to the employees. We're always looking, how can we do better? But based on everything we're aware of, we're doing a pretty good job blocking it and being protected on this back end with the policies.
And again, those $100,000 limits are the limits that we have for our agency as well. So we've gone out to even try and buy higher limits for ourselves. And it's 100,000 across the board at the moment.
With respects to the training, I just made a note also. I think we should check with Chubb, and maybe you've covered it with Josh, but there are some resources available through the carrier that could be made available. A lot of it's online. Probably difficult to sit through, but may be valuable.
We can make it a requirement. We do other things. She doesn't get the final vote. It's okay.
We're getting to the number.
He thinks.
We'll just blend it in with airborne pathogens and Title IX. Everything else. Well, thank you, folks. Appreciate you helping us, protecting us, and working with Josh.
We thank you, and I'm sure Brooke has many thanks to Josh, just alone with that one application. So, yeah.
He needs a project.
Sure. Any other questions or anything else?
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for
Absolutely.
letting
Thank you
us
all.
be here.
And if something comes up and you think we should need to know about it, just call her Josh, we'll get you on the next agenda or not upcoming agenda.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
This is the topic Josh and I talk about probably every other time we meet.
This is the first time that we've ever went through that. So is this something new, something that we're gonna do on an annual basis?
Probably on an
Action
annual
item?
basis.
Okay.
No,
It's a renewal. We've had it for about 2 years. Just with everything going on, thought it'd just be a good idea to kind of.
we shared with the board probably 2, maybe 3 years ago about the Neosho experience and what set us off to do more on this. Because they were hacked, they had to bring in one of those crisis management teams, notify all their students, about being hacked, all the credit report stuff, identity theft. We took that information, gave it to Josh. He started working on it along with Carmel at the time. And then so this group has been very good at being proactive, working with Josh on what's the best we can get based on our activity, our budget, our risk. And they have done an outstanding job for us.
Okay, all right, just jumping around, we're back down to recommendation of new board members.
So Wendy was in on an interview along with LJ and David. They interviewed Mike Mattson and Heather Peterson to join the board. And I believe that group is recommending to the rest of the board to vote on adding them to the board of directors. Mike is Riley County, Heather lives in Potawatomi County. So we would need a motion in a second if you want to move forward with that addition. Ask Wendy, or I sat in on the interviews. Dave Fritchie.
Not me.
Okay.
Wendy and I could try to answer any questions you might have, but they both interviewed well. And bring different additional talents to your group.
Mike talks a lot, so just kind of have to keep him down. Yeah.
And it's the Heather Peterson, I know, architect.
Architect should be
Yes.
Yeah, should be great. Need action.
Yes, please. we need a
Or if
motion.
you need to go in executive session for any reason to discuss it, we can do that if it's needed.
What's your last name, Mike?
Mike Mattson, Matson, and Heather Peterson.
I think if the two individuals are being recommended by the individual board members that interviewed them, then I have no problem in
Making that-
recommending or making a motion that we accept those new members or new board members.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the table for Michael Mattson from Riley and Heather Peterson from Wamego for new MATC board members. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
We'll notify them and get that process started. Good.
Okay. Up next, annual report review for Jim.
See if we can put this on the screen. This is a working copy. The final, this is not the final copy, but I want you to see this will be a front and back. It'll open up, if I remember right. Yeah, it's a little confusing this way. We'll get you a copy. The final product should be in this week. But we talked about an annual report, and Bryant in our marketing area did a super job laying this out in graphics, good information, pictures. So let's leave it on this page for a minute, and then we'll go back to the other page just to give you an idea of what this will look like. Harry and I will be using it a lot as we talk with potential donors. He and I have a meeting with the Riley County Commissioners 16th. We're going to give them an update, but this really kind of gives everybody some input on who we serve, how good we are. It's really outcomes based. I know it's a little hard to read there, but as soon as we get the final copies, then we'll make sure we send one to you. Going back to the other page, please. That page doesn't matter as much, but that'll be the front one, folks. It's not a real good picture of me because I had a haircut. I think that was the last time I had a haircut. If you are in a position where you would like some extra copies and share it with folks without offending any of your businesses, let us know. We'll make sure you have some. But I think it's just a good visual presentation about what we did in the past academic year. So
Sure.
a lot of the deans and other folks had input on the content. And like I said, Brian did the miracle work.
Are these going to be available for graduation?
Probably. Sarah, is there anything you want to add?
I'm glad I gave it to Brian to fix.
Yes. I didn't like my rough copy, but
Oh, no, it was so bad.
I know.
If you want some for graduation, I need to know that. Mr.
We'll order more. Don't worry, I got it. It's the first time in my knowledge, anyway, the college has had anything like this to put out. So
I think it's a great tool to use with.
It's also easy to keep updated. That was everything I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Based on the way Bryant created it, we can keep it updated as data comes in, so it's most current.
and it's a quick read. Not asking somebody to read a 10 or 12 page report. Couple of other things real quick before we go on. Chris, why don't you talk real quick? We had a review from KBOR on civil rights, or what was it on?
The adult ed program.
Adult ed program, sorry. Meant to scare you.
In 2019, fall of 2019, since our program was new, or it was one of the newer programs since the transition to med and tech, we were scheduled to be essentially an audit. They call it a monitoring visit, but they pull our data, they pull our student files, they observe classes, they just make sure that everything is functioning well. If there's any areas that we're maybe deficient in, they make some suggestions and we fix them to be in compliance and everything. COVID messed with that. It got kind of delayed. And then there was a change in the adult ed world at KBOR. So it got pushed to last month. We were able to complete it finally, and we got our report back. It's broken, and I got this late Wednesday, so I apologize. This is in your packets. It's broken into 3 sections. The first section is findings. The second is recommendations from KBOR. And then finally, the last section is the promising practices, areas to highlight best practices that could serve as models for other adult education programs. I am ecstatic to report that in the first section of findings, there were no areas where MATC adult education program is out of compliance. So we're good. Recommendations, they would like to just see us continuing working with local area workforce too. It's part of our WIOA, so working with Kansas Works, Department of Children and Families, continuing those partnerships and trying to grow those. That is something I work with really closely with Joe Booner down in Kansas Works. And then as far as the promising practices, they highlighted 3 areas that they would like me to, they're encouraging me to share this information at the Kansas Adult Education Association Conference in the spring. We're one of the few programs in the state that took advantage of MATC's learning management system Canvas. So all of our ESL curriculum and GED curriculum are all on Canvas, so students can access them on campus, at home, anywhere where they're at. And everything is aligned perfectly with the national reporting standards. That's just the overall anchors that hold all of our curriculum together. And the other big kudo that we got was that we have cross-trained most of the institutional staff, specifically in the front office, student services, with adult ed information. So that way, if a student comes up to the main entrance, anyone can answer the question. And if it's a more in-depth question, they know exactly who to point them to get them the information right here on site so that no one has to wait. So overall, the audit came back great. Everyone is, KBOR is very happy with our program, and we're off their list for a few years.
They're off the naughty list.
They're off the naughty list. So yeah, it was very happy with that. And then one last quick thing with adult ed, with graduation coming up. Since May, we've had 13 graduates. We have 3 more that are on track to graduate before graduation ceremony on December 19th. And I currently have 10 students that are signed up for our ceremony. So we can potentially have 10 students at graduations.
Fantastic.
Very happy.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That'll give our total, what, right around 100?
Yes, I believe we're right at like 93, 94 with these last ones. We'll be almost at 100.
Great.
Since 2018. Yeah.
Any of them want to come back over,
Yes.
continue their, good.
Yes, we've got, I believe I have 2 students right now that have, we have at least 5 or 6 that are already in programs at METC that were in our program. There's a still taking English as a second language courses to have that support while they work in, I know one is in INT, one is in business. And I do have 2 students that are close to graduating that have already told me, yes, I'm going to go into auto tech, and the other one is interested in nursing. So
Okay.
I've got to get all that information too.
Thank you, Chris. Good work.
Thank you.
Okay, are we going on to discussion of events now?
Yep.
Okay. Facility project updates, Josh and Sarah. Any updates?
Nothing, no new projects, maybe just a couple updates on some that we've been talking about in the past. So in Wamego, the building 2 construction, phase 3, the final phase, it's still on track with a punch list sometime early January. So that's moving along as it was supposed to. As far as the timeline goes, we're kind of worried about that with materials, but everything's going well there. Building 3, the finalized drawings have been completed and turned over to the contractor for finalized detailed pricing. So we should have that back soon. And then the only other thing that we've talked about a few times, we're still investigating different possibilities for the HVAC system here on main campus, working with some local companies to try to come up with some options. And then we'll probably then have to come back and do an RFP to take it out to get some bids. I think what we've kind of came to a consensus, the first goal of that is to get all the systems that we do have on one new controlled software system that can control them all. Fix a couple of our zoning issues with some of the classrooms that have been kind of chopped up. There's some thermostat problems there, as well as getting some of those areas cooled evenly and heated. And then after that, kind of work on a phased approach, starting with the oldest rooftop units and start getting those swapped out.
And we have replaced one, correct?
Yeah, we were forced to replace one with a lot of the others at the same age, so needs to be addressed. So, any questions on that?
Did you come up with a resolution on the water, sewer, and electrical stuff for building 3?
Still waiting for the cost information.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think they're finishing up the drawings with the civil.
As soon as they do and we analyze it, I'll be getting with the city manager. I've talked to her that we're coming that way.
Okay, anything else? All right, on to faculty senate updates. Any?
Mr. Cook,
Not really a whole lot to say, you know, with faculty, we just got back Monday. It's, you see a lot of posts on Facebook now, students are gonna want to be doing extra credit to get their grades up. I kid you not, as soon as I got out of my car, I had just taken my seatbelt off and a student was coming up asking about making up assignments. So that's kind of where the faculty is going to be sitting these next 2 or 3 weeks, is trying to get everybody prepared for finals. Other than that, we really don't have a whole lot to basically say. Too short of a break, I'll just say that.
yeah, the break was good, but everybody is pretty worn out. It's been a fast semester. Right now, we're not planning on a December board meeting. If something comes up, we'll let you know if we need a special one. The audit report should be at the January board meeting. Should be. LJ and I have a Zoom meeting with the auditor tomorrow. They're going to get preliminaries. From what I've been informed and kept in the loop on, no issues. So at the January meeting, you should have the audit presented to you. Commencement and nurses pinning is the 18th of December at University Christian Church. Any details that they need to know? We'll have seating for you if.
It'll be reserved seating by Hannah. She can kind of show you where that's at. It'll be to the left of the stage. Reserved seating for you and spouses if you so choose to be seated with them. And then it starts at 10. And if you want to attend the nursing pinning, we can have that reserved as well. That starts at 9 o'clock. So
Bob Koppel from Via Christi will speak at commencement. It's the smaller commencement service of the two.
yeah, there'll be about 60 to 70 students at it. So relatively small. That's with adult learning students there. So.
Do we have the same music?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about Jim's music?
Yes, we are.
That's the one piece that has not been asked to be changed. So
I get more
still
kudos
that.
from students and parents.
I know.
Yeah, you still have to make sure that you don't.
Yeah, we can't play highway to efficiency.
With
It could be Stairway to Heaven.
There's still
I listened to
copyright issues.
the address from Mike Rowe online here a couple of weeks ago and thought it was pretty humorous.
He's done a couple of them, yeah. I think you'd have to pay.
Since approve the check registers or anything.
As soon as we get that, we'll send it out to you and we'll do an email approval. We haven't had any issues. Everything's good. There's people are worn out. You know, Sarah mentioned with her kid, she's not feeling well. We've got a few other folks out. I don't know if it's flu or COVID. I don't think it's COVID. We've been very,
Break.
yeah, I think everybody took a break, relaxed, and gets warm. That's when it catches up to them.
I only speak from experience because not from MATC, but from a local school board, I've been on the non-receiving end of some sort of, something like that. It didn't get presented at the board and.
No, we'll make sure. I would say the delay is due more to people not being well. anything else, we've got no issues, but yeah, we're gonna make sure you have that in the next few days, get that handled. I think that's about it that I can think of.
How are things on hiring?
We're still searching for a CFO and for HR. We have some applicants for HR. We had a good applicant for CFO, but that person found another position. So again, if you know of someone, please urge them. We still have Carmela as a consultant. Melissa works with Sarah and Josh and I on a pretty regular basis. We're keeping track of cash flow, this, that, and the other thing, keeping it clean. But yes, we do need a CFO, but we need to get the right person, not just anybody. I think we have some HR interviews next week.
Is there anything else?
Thank you for your time, and we'll have a couple new members with us next month, or in January, excuse me.
That date isn't set, correct?
It's, I think when Heather is gonna probably, I think Hannah is going to send out an email to make sure, do we have any conflicts with the spring with the schedule we have projected?
Okay.
But if there is a better night or time or whatever that works for folks, we want to accommodate you, not us.
These guys.
They just want the free food. All right, hopefully we'll see you at commencement. Again, thank you so much.
Are you gonna see LJ?
Only on Zoom, but we'll get it. to him.
Just send him, take him an
I'm
empty
taking it
card.
You can do that if you want to, or you can eat it and leave it some crumbs.
I mean, nobody's got to tell on you. We won't tell. We'll say Jim Tucker.
Thank you, folks. Go out and get a handful of sand they use on those Clay County roads.
Hey, our Clay County roads look pretty darn good. They got it all paved up and our road is like good.
Oh, yeah.